We can start.
Yes, Vali.
Om Adhyatmirandasya Dhananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So yesterday we discussed some of most amazing acts of affection showed by the Lord for his devotees. So how Krishna is so merciful to his devotees, and especially anybody who takes to spiritual life. Krishna is so very merciful and kind upon him, and Krishna wants to give. So discuss this particular point is about situations of an unsuccessful yogi, very experts in next life, and he continues the process of devotional service. So we discussed that. So the most wonderful thing, most important thing to understand about this is a devotee is never loser. It began also verse number 40. Krishna said, पार्थ नैवेह नामुत्र विनाशस्तस्य विद्यते नहि कल्याणकृत कश्चित् दुर्गतिं तात गच्छति. A devotee is never loser. Anybody who takes to spiritual path, rest assured that he will never be loser. He will gain only, and there will be enormous gains for him. So that's what we discussed. So today verse number 46. Please recite.
Hare Krishna. तपस्वीभ्यो अधिको योगी
तपस्वीभ्यो अधिको योगी
ज्ञानिभ्योऽपि मतोऽधिका
ज्ञानिभ्योऽपि मतोऽधिका
कर्मिभ्यश्च अधिको चाधिको योगी
कर्मिभ्यश्चाधिको योगी
तस्माद्योगी भवार्जुना.
तस्माद् योगी भवार्जुना.
Translation: a yogi is greater than ascetic, greater than the empiristic, and greater than the fruitful worker. Therefore, O Arjuna, in all circumstances, be a yogi. Purport: when we speak of yoga, we refer to linking our consciousness with the supreme absolute truth. Such a process is named differently by various practitioners in terms of particular method adopted. When the linking process is predominantly in a fruitful activities, it is called karma yoga. When it is predominantly empirical, it is called jnana yoga. And when it is predominantly in a devotional relationship with the Supreme Lord, it is called bhakti yoga. Bhakti Yoga or Krishna consciousness is the ultimate perfection of all yogas. As will be explained in the next verse, the Lord has confirmed herein the superiority of yoga, but has not mentioned that it is a better than Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga is a full spiritual knowledge, and therefore nothing can excel it. Asceticism without self knowledge is imperfect. Empiric knowledge without surrender to Supreme Lord is also imperfect. And fruitive work without Krishna consciousness is a waste of time. Therefore, the most highly praised from the yoga performance mentioned here is a Bhakti Yoga. And this is still more clearly explained in next verse.
Yes. So this tapasvi, which was mentioned in Bhagavad Gita 4.28, that verse Krishna described about tapasvi. Dravya jnana, tapo yajna, yoga yajna, satha pare. So all these various tapasvis were mentioned. So although this tapasvi, he may perform austerities, but he has not yet acquired knowledge. So that's why he is not as exalted as Jnani. So even we see many software engineers also do tapasya, right? Kind of tapasya only, na? It is that they, they may work so hard. Sometimes they have to skip their meals. Sometimes they have to sleep late and get up early, isn't it? So kind of tapasya they also do. But not all tapasvis have knowledge. Whereas Jnani, he has got knowledge and he knows Shastra. But his realizations, it ends at Brahman. So Jnani's reach is up to only Brahman. Beyond that, and as well as karmis and karma yogis, they are more fruitive in their activities, and that's why they act very piously. Various things they do to do pious activities. But yogi is the one who connects with the Supreme Lord, and that's why he's considered to be most advanced. Yogi knows super soul and he connects with the Supreme Lord. So that's why Krishna is telling, because all other things which other people are doing, tapasvi, jnani, karmi, karmakandi, these people are also more or less hovering on a material platform only, which is temporary. But yogi, he is connecting with the real essence, with the real person, that is super soul, and that's why he is considered to be most advanced. So that's how this verse is telling about the progressive rungs on yoga ladder by clearly speaking that karmis, yogis, jnanis, tapasvi, karmis, jnanis, tapasvis, they are not as advanced as yogi. Yogi is certainly above them. And he is giving his final statement in the next verse about who is the topmost amongst yogis also. So this is the last section of this particular chapter, the topmost yogi. Is this the last section? So and it is telling us about how ultimate stage of yoga practice is pure devotion to Krishna. That is the ultimate stage, and that's how the bhakti yoga is the perfection of yoga. Bhakti yoga is not just a method of purification like other yogas. So bhakti yoga is also the goal of purification. Means and goal is the same. So once upon a time, one person, he went to king and he asked the king that, my dear sir, I want to see the gold. I have never seen gold in my life. And I heard a lot about gold. Can you please tell me about something about, can you show me the gold? And then the king said, oh yes, please come. And he called him up on the stage. And then he told his servants, please bring some gold coins. And then his servant brought some gold coins and showed him, this is called as gold. And then that person realized, oh, this is gold, but the, the throne of the king is also made up of the same thing, that is gold only. And the steps were also embroidered with gold. And the walls have a lot of gold linings, and even the gate and the handles of the doors, many things were made up of gold. So the path with which I came, I saw gold many places. And now I have reached to gold also. So same way, it is said that, so path and the goal is the same in bhakti. So bhakti is not just one method for purification, which is to be adopted and then given up. But that's what many other processes they do. Like people do vrata, they will do this vrata, that vrata, and then they do udyapan of the vrata, means they give up that process. ठीक है, अभी हो गया, उसके आगे नहीं करना है, result मिल गया, काम खत्म. But bhakti is not like that. Bhakti is a ahetuki apratihata. Apratihata means it is never stopped. So it is not that at one point of time a person becomes so perfect that he gives a bhakti only. Because he has achieved the goal. It's not like that. It's the means as well as the goal. So and also it is the eternal position of the living entity. So that's what is being spoken in this particular section. So Krishna is speaking in this particular verse about how yogi is better than all others who endeavor for perfection, ascetic, empiric, fruity worker, etc., etc. And in purport, Prabhupada is talking about the yoga is defined as linking consciousness to the supreme absolute truth. So if you remember, we discussed this before, that the main yoga means it should have a connection with the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, it cannot be called as yoga. Tapasvi is not, may not be Jnani, he may not be always yogi, but Jnana yogi is different. Karmi and Karma yogi is different. So yoga means linking with the Supreme Lord. That's what absolute truth. Maybe Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, whatever it may be, but it has to be linked to that. So methods adopted, the yoga is named differently. If it is predominantly empirical knowledge, it is called as Jnana Yoga. And if it is predominantly devotional, it is called as Bhakti Yoga. But ultimately, Bhakti Yoga is the ultimate perfection of all yogas. And anything short of that is imperfect. Because even ascetics without knowledge is perfect. Empiric knowledge without surrender is imperfect. And in this way, Karma Yoga also without Krishna consciousness is waste of time. So in this way, unless until for every yoga practice there has to be addition of bhakti, then only that can results actually. But can perfect is only by the bhakti process into it, adding the bhakti process into it. And ultimately that's how all yogas, all paths of yoga, they surrender into bhakti yoga. They culminate into bhakti yoga. They all come to bhakti yoga only. So in this way, progressive rungs on the yoga ladder by glorifying yogis to be above karmis, gyanis and tapasvis. And now Krishna is giving his final statement about the yogis of the highest caliber. That's the next verse, 47th, the last verse of this chapter. Next slide.
Can you put it down? I cannot see. Yeah. Yoginam api sarvesham matgatena anta atmana sarvadam bhajate yomam same yuktamo mata. And of all yogis, the one with great faith who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me. He is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. That is my opinion. The the word bhajate is significant here. Bhajate has its root in the word bhaj, which is used when there is need of service. The English word worship cannot be used in the same sense as bhaj. Worship means to adore and to show respect and honor to the worthy one. But the service with love and faith is especially meant for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One can avoid worshipping a respectable man or a demigod and may be called discourteous, but one cannot avoid serving the Supreme Lord without being thoroughly condemned. Every living entity is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus every living entity is intended to serve the Supreme Lord by his own constitution. Falling to do this, he falls down. Sorry. Failing to do this, he falls down. The Bhagavatam confirms this as follows: Ya Esham Purusham Sakshat Atma Pradam Ishwaram Na Bhajati Avajananti Shadbhrasata Anantyada. Anyone who does not render service and neglects his duty unto the primeval Lord, who is the source of all living entities, will certainly fall down from his constitutional position. In this verse, also the word bhajanti is used. Therefore, bhajanti is applicable to the Supreme Lord only, whereas the word worship can be applied to demigods or to any other common living entity. The word avajananti used in this verse, Srimad Bhagavatam, is also found in Bhagavad Gita. Avajananti ma mudam. Only the fools and rascals deride the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. Such fools take it upon themselves to write commentaries on Bhagavad Gita without an attitude of service to the Lord. Consecutively, they cannot properly distinguish between the word bhajananti and word worship. The culmination of all kinds of yoga practices lies in Bhakti Yoga. All other yoga are but means to come to the point of Bhakti in Bhakti Yoga. Yoga actually means Bhakti Yoga. All other yogas are progressions toward the destination of Bhakti Yoga. From the beginning of the Karma Yoga to the end of Bhakti Yoga is a long way to self-realization. Karma Yoga without fruitive results is the beginning of this path. When Karma Yoga increases in knowledge and renunciation, the stage is called Jnana Yoga. And when Jnana Yoga increases in the meditation of Supreme Soul by different physical processes and the mind is on Him, it is called Ashtanga Yoga. And when one surpasses the Ashtanga Yoga and comes to the point of Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, it is called Bhakti Yoga, the culmination. Actually, Bhakti Yoga is the ultimate goal, but to analyze Bhakti Yoga minutely, one has to understand these other yogas. The yogi who is progressive is therefore on the true path of eternal good fortune. One who sticks to a particular point and does not make further progress is called by that particular name: Karma Yogi, Jnana Yogi, or Dhyana Yogi, Raja Yogi, Hatha Yogi, etc. If one is fortunate enough to come to the point of Bhakti Yogi, uh, sorry, थोड़ा ऊपर yes, थोड़ा हाँ yes. So when come to the point of yoga, it is understood that he has surpassed all other yogas. Therefore, to become Krishna conscious is the highest stage of yoga. Just as when we speak of Himalayan, we refer to the world's highest mountains, of which the highest peak, Mount Everest, is considered to be the culmination. It is by great fortune that one comes to Krishna consciousness on the part of Bhakti Yoga to become well situated according to the Vedic direction. The ideal yogi concentrates his attention on Krishna, who is called Shyam Sundar, who is as beautifully colored as a cloud, whose lotus-like face is as effulgent as the sun, whose dress is brilliant with jewels, and whose body is flower garlanded. Illuminating all sides is his gorgeous luster, which is called Brahma Jyoti. He incarnates in different forms such as Ram, Narsimha, Varaha, and Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he descends like a human being as the son of Mother Yashoda, and he is known as Krishna, Govind, and Vasudeva. He is the perfect child, husband, friend, and master, and he is full with all opulences and transcendental qualities. If one remains fully conscious of these features of the Lord, he is called the highest yogi. The stage of highest perfection of yoga is attained only by Bhakti Yoga, and as it is confirmed in all Vedic literature. Yasya deve para bhakti yatha deve tatha guru taiste kathis. कृतिस्थ हित अर्थः प्रवक्षन्ते महात्मनः. Only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the Supreme Master are all imports of Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. Bhaktir asya bhajna tad iha mutorpadi narashayana mushim mana kalpanam itar eva Naishkarman. Bhakti means devotional service to the Lord, which is free from desire for material profit, either in this life or in the next. Devoid of such inclination, one should fully absorb the mind in the Supreme. That is the purpose of Naishkarman. These are some of the means for performance of bhakti or Krishna consciousness, the highest perfectional stage of the yoga system. Surrender unto God. It,
Mhm.
it's done क्या? इसके नीचे
Yeah,
कुछ? Okay.
the same. Okay. So this is the final but the conclusive verse talking about Bhakti Yogi who serves Krishna is the best of all yogis. Yoginam api sarvesham madgatena antaratmana shraddhavan bhajate yoman samay yuktatamo mataha. So this is verse for memorization also. So in this verse, Krishna is telling how amongst everyone, one who is serving in his devotional manner is the best of all yogis. Because generally on the Lord, always thinking, remembering the Lord always with great love. And that's why he is considered to be the topmost of all yogis. Because generally the yogis may be official meditators, but devotee meditates on the Lord with love. So, so that is the special characteristic of Bhakti Yogi, because he meditates on the Lord with love. Bhajate. So Prabhupada is starting the whole purport with Bhajate. What Bhajate means? Serving the Lord. It's not just worshipping, but it's serving. So Srila Baldev Vidyabhushan, he is explaining Krishna's words that although there is a relative grading of superiority and inferiority amongst the tapasvis and so on, still they are all inferior to devotee. In same way, as ordinary mountains, both tall and short ones are inferior to mountains made up of gold. What is the mountain made up of gold? Nobody knows. Which is the mountain made up of gold?
Meru. Mount Meru.
Ah, Mount Meru. Mount Meru is the mountain made of gold. So, whatever mountains we see around, it may be Sahyadri, which is there in our Maharashtra here, or it may be Gandhamadan or Himalaya or Aravalli, or in West Alpine, whatever mountains may be there. But these are big or small, all mountains are smaller in front of Meru mountain. That is the topmost mountain in this particular universe. So in this way, same way, a devotee, is the topmost, and all other different yogis, they're all inferior to devotee. Better, bigger or smaller yogis, tapasvis, karmis, gyanis, whatever they may be, but they are inferior to devotee. That's what Krishna is telling. So, but then he is asking, because in previous verse Krishna says that yogi is better than anyone, right? So the question may be, but then in previous verse Krishna said that yogi is better than everyone, and now he is telling something else, it seems, So he's asking, is there anyone greater than the yogi? So the answer is that the beginning yogi nam means no, yogis are tapasvi, jnani, karmi, karmakandi, everyone. That is true. But amongst yogis also, when we go to the ascending hierarchy of yoga, there are many other yogis like Karma Yogi. Better than Karma Yogi is Dhyana Yogi, because he is properly engaged, because he's advanced to the level of Dhyana. And but one who has ascended to Samadhi, but one who has ascended to Samadhi is even better engaged. That is called as Yukta Tara. So Yukta means one who is on the level of Dhyana. That is Yukta. Means who is meditating a lot. So such a yogi is better than all others, correct? Other paths, karmi, tapasvi, jnani, etc., etc. So such person is called as yukta. Let us come to the samadhi. We discussed various stages. In that dharana, dhyana, samadhi. These were the last three stages.
Hare
So
Krishna.
person who is at dhyana stage is called as.
Sorry, Project, to
Sorry,
interrupt. Voice is breaking, Project. Little breaking it is, voice. Maybe camera can be switched off, Project. As such, we are not able to see you.
Okay. Okay, yeah. I can switch off my video. The reason I was putting, because of some network issue only, I was putting the laptop up that it will catch more signal. But anyways, so I was explaining that he is called as Yukta. He is properly engaged. Means he is now उनका connection हो गया अभी भगवान के साथ. It's like that. But then one who is ascended to the stage of Samadhi, remember we were discussing these stages in Dhyana Yoga. Samadhi means who is completely engaged. So that is better engaged, Yukta Tara. One who has achieved Bhakti Yoga in the form of hearing and chanting and so on is called the best, Yukta Tama. Means amongst yogis also, a devotee, Bhakti Yogi, is better than the Ashtanga Yogi who has achieved the stage of Dharana, Dhyana or Samadhi. Even if he achieved the stage of Samadhi, still a Bhakti Yogi is better than him. Can you say why? Can anybody say why?
Because in Bhakti Yoga, the goal and process is same.
Okay.
Because a person who is in samadhi, he is just working for himself, but a devotee, he works for the benefit of others.
Okay, the other yogis are more selfish, whereas Bhakti Yogi is working for the benefit of others. Fine. Any other answer? Why do you consider Bhakti Yogi to be superior than even a Ashtanga Yogi in a Samadhi stage? We are not talking about previous stages. Even if somebody has attained the Samadhi stage, a devotee is better than him.
Guruji, because Bhakti Yogi, after this Samadhi stage, their yogi, they are in Bhakti Yoga, but in devotional service, from beginning only the person is practicing that stage.
This stage, can you again repeat?
Guruji, that Ashtanga Yogi, after Samadhi, he is completely absorbed in Krishna. But in Bhakti Yoga, in beginning only he is practically engaged his senses in Krishna's service. That's why he is better than that Samadhi stage in Ashtanga Yogi.
You are most closest to answer actually, but little somebody can refine his answer. That's the it's almost there.
Bhakti Yoga means like it is ahetukiya pratihata, devotional service.
Okay, correct. You are also just mentioned the point, but again, still you have to hit the target exactly.
They are not motivated by any other ulterior goals.
Okay, yes. But after that, you use some two words which are very significant.
Love and faith.
This Ashtanga Yogi, love, yes, love. What love implies?
Service.
Love. How do you? Ah, exactly. Correct. So, whereas Ashtanga Yogi and this yoga, even in Dhyana Samadhi stage, he's simply meditating on the Lord. Whereas a Bhakti Yogi is engaged in active service of the Lord. That's why he's superior. You know, just imagine some person comes and simply keeps on looking at you and appreciates you. Prabhu, you are so nice. You look so beautiful. You are so, you know. But more than that, we like a person who helps us, who gives us some service, will feel more obliged towards that person, right? Who is doing the prasadam, somebody folds your clothes and keeps them in your locker, or somebody, you know, uh, somebody helps you in your studies, or somebody, brings water for you, or some Mahaprasad for you from temple. So these are all acts, you know, or somebody is going for purchasing, he'll bring things for you. So there all acts are more pleasing than some person who is simply, neutrally just looking at you all day and night, right? So same with Lord also. We have to know that Lord is a person. So he is certainly happy with Ashtanga Yogi, because at least he has given up that material platform. But the devotee is more better because devotee is actively engaged into the service of the Lord. He is actively engaged. So sometimes we go to some village, you must have experienced it, and some people, they just cook with open mouth, they just keep looking at with open mouth, they just keep looking at us, as if we have come from different species. So we don't feel so attracted to these people, right? We feel it is funny also. But then some person amongst them, he comes and he says, sir, Swamiji आइए, इधर बैठिए, पानी लेके आओ आपके लिए, कुछ शरबत लेके आओ, आप कहाँ से आए हैं? And he starts conversing, he makes arrangements for us. So we'll feel more obliged towards him, right? And we like that person more than just a person who is neutrally looking towards us. So so in this way, we see that the yogi, he is neutral. Ashtanga Yogi, although he has come to the stage of Samadhi, but still he is neutral. Whereas a devotee is actively engaged into the service of the Lord, and that's why he's superior. Now one can attain bhakti through gradual Vedic process. There are two ways of attaining bhakti. One can directly take to bhakti, or one may take through karma, then one get elevated to jnana, then get elevated to yoga, and then to bhakti. So both methods are there. So as this is very simple, there is a step-by-step method, there is an elevator method. Somebody may take directly to bhakti by coming in contact with Krishna's pure devotees, and in this way he hears the shastras, and then he acts in full faith, Shraddhavan, and gradually he progresses to the point where Krishna has entered his very existence. He becomes Antaratmana. Antaratmana means that Krishna has entered his very existence, means wo Krishnamay ban gaya abhi. That is called as Antaratmana. So his every activities are devoted for Krishna. So gradually one will come to that stage, and in this way devotee becomes Madgata. Madgata means always absorbed in thoughts of Krishna also. So that's how that will happen if somebody may take directly. But some person, he may not take it so directly, he may want to take it indirectly. So they will go first to karma, then jnana, then yoga. In yoga also so many yoga ladders, and ultimately he may come to bhakti. But best is to take elevator method and directly take to bhakti. So, so here the theme of this last verse of this particular chapter is that even better than yogi is a devotee who worships Krishna. Why? Why bhakti yogi is topmost? First, because he has great faith in Krishna, Shraddhavan. Second, because he takes shelter in him, Bhajate Yomam, you know, so always abides in Krishna. Third, because he always thinks of him within himself, Antaratmana. And in this way, and fourth is he does loving service to Krishna. So in this way, because of these 4 points, Yogina Vapi Saveshan, Madgatena, Madgata, abides in Lord, Antaratmana, always think of Krishna within himself, Shraddhavan, he has great faith, he does loving service. These are the 4 qualifications because of which a bhakti yogi is topmost. I'll repeat 4 qualifications. Madgata means always abides in Krishna or always takes shelter in Krishna. Antaratmana, always thinks of Krishna because, always thinks of Krishna within himself. That is Antaratmana. Shraddhavan, because he has great faith in Krishna. And Bhajate, he renders loving service unto Krishna. So in the purport, Prabhupada is saying the importance of word is Bhajate. Bhajate has the word root in the verb bhaj, which also the root of the word bhakti. So bhakti also comes from the verb. The root of the word bhakti is also bhaj, and bhajate also same here. So, and that is implies there is a need of service. So Prabhupada is telling worship and service is not the same thing. So bhajan and archan is not the same. So it is not the same meaning. So Prabhupada is very brilliantly speaking about what is the difference between worship and service. Worship means what? To adore, to show respect, to honor to the worthy person or whatever. So, so like that, one may just respect or honor. But service means there is a active service done with love and faith, and it is meant especially for the Supreme Lord. That's why the word bhakti is meant only for Vishnu or Krishna or such personalities, Vishnu Tattvas. Some people say Durga Bhakti, Shiva Bhakti. Actually, the word bhakti is not used for demigods. Bhakti word is used only for the Supreme Lord and nobody else. So, yeah, and there is love and faith on the Lord. So, and then Prabhupada is explaining how service to the Lord cannot be avoided by any living entity. Why? Because it is a nature. Jivera Swarupa hai, Krishnera Nityadas. So one may avoid worshipping a respectable man or demigod, or sometimes person may be called discourteous also, that he is not very proper. So one may avoid respecting others. That is possible, but one cannot avoiding serving. The service is must, and if one doesn't serve Supreme Lord, then he is thoroughly condemned, because every living entity is part and parcel of the Lord, and it is constitutional position to serve the Lord. Jivera Sarupahai Krishna Nityadas. So from Bhagavatam, 11th canto, 5th chapter, verse number 3, Prabhupada is giving reference to that Ya Esham Purusham verse, that if one neglect the service and duty of the Supreme Lord, one falls down from his constitution. And this word bhajanti is only applicable to Supreme Lord. So Prabhupada is to say that in Bengal they have invented Kali Bhajan, but there is nothing called as Kali Bhajan. Bhajan is always for Lord Vishnu. Of course, in this side of India, western side of India, they have Sai Bhajan. Maybe they have invented these days Jesus Bhajan also. I don't know. Maybe it is like that. They might have invented Jesus Bhajan also. Actually, the word bhajan is only for the Lord, Supreme Personality of Godhead. And worship can be applied to demigods or any other living entity, isn't it? So there may be worship of various demigods. There are worship of cinema stars also. There is worship of politicians also. There is the worship of cricket stars also. there is worship, there can be worship of, even forefathers. So different worships can be there, but bhakti is only for the Lord, not for any demigod or not for any other living entity. Hmm. So then here the word, yeah.
One small question. We say usually Bhajanandi and Ghoshanandi. And usually we say Bhajanandis are those who go to secluded place and do their bhajan. But here Prabhupada bhajan means he's saying service. So how they can be called Bhajanandi?
Oh, they are antaratmana service. Internally they are rendering service to the Lord. Service is not only external. When the person becomes so advanced that so that verse also na gramya varta na kahibe, gramya varta na shunibe, bhalana khaibe ar bhalana paribe, amadina manadena hayya, Radha Krishna naam sada laibe, and what is that? Last line is Radha Krishna manasete sada seva karibe, something like that. It is, that internally within your mind you keep on worshipping Radha and Krishna. So that said, some people are so advanced that within their heart, within itself. So service is not always external. Service can be rendered internally also, but that is very advanced platform. Or a very advanced.
Ashtanga yogis also in one sense they are doing internal service.
No, they don't do any service. Who told that they are doing service?
No, I'm asking.
No, they are not doing any service. They are just meditating.
Okay.
Whereas this you know the story of Patishtanpur Brahmana. He was serving, although he was just sitting and meditating on serving. He was not just meditating on the Lord, but he was in meditation. He was serving. He was cooking. Then that kheer became very hot, and he wanted to check. And then he put his finger, and that finger actually got burnt. He was not physically doing anything. Inside his heart, he was serving. So that way, these Bhajanandis, they serve internally within their hearts. And that is also valid type of service, but that is done only by very exalted devotees. Otherwise, most of them are pretenders. That's why our acharyas did not so much appreciate Bhajananandi mood, because unless until you are very exalted, one cannot be Bhajananandi. It is simply a pretense. Tushtaman tumi kisera Vaishnav pratisthara tare nirjanera ghare tava harinama kevala kaitav. So that type of mood is only possible for very exalted souls. So then the word comes avajananti. Ye bhajanti avajananti. So only fools and rascals, Prabhupada says, they deride the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Avajananti ma mudha manushim tanumashrita. And they try to comment on Bhagavad Gita without attitude of service. So they are not writing commentaries on Bhagavad Gita to glorify Krishna or to serve Krishna, to spread message of Krishna, but they want to speculate. That's why they are called as avajananti ma mudha, na bhajanti. But they don't have attitude of service. They want to just derive their own gratification, their own name, fame, reputation, speculation. That's what they are interested in. And in this way, they cannot differentiate between this word bhajanti and worshipping, archana. So, and then Prabhupada later is speaking about how the highest yogi or bhakti yogi, he concentrates on the form of Krishna as Shyam Sundar. He concentrates on this beautiful, most beautiful form. So generally Ashtanga yogi, he meditates on the Paramatma feature of the Lord, which is four-handed form, a plenary expansion. But we see that even Paramatma is very neutral. Paramatma is neutral. So whereas a devotee, he is thinking about and meditating on Shyam Sundar form, who is very reciprocative. So ahead it will come. Paramatma is what? Upadrashta, Anumanta, Bharta, Bhokta, Maheshwara. He is not very active. But Lord, Supreme Lord as Shyam Sundar is very active, very, very reciprocative. So as explained in this verse, how do we attain that highest yogic perfection? that is achieved by Bhakti Yoga, and Prabhupada is quoting Shvetashvatar Upanishad, Yasya Deve Para Bhakti, Tatha Yatha Deve Tatha Guru, Tasyaite Kathita Hyartha Prakashante Mahatmanaha. How does one take to this stage of highest perfection? By implicit faith in both Lord and the spiritual master. By that, what happens? All the imports of Vedic knowledge are automatically revealed. So, and this particular Gyanis and Yogis, they talk a lot. Gyanis is about Naishkarmya, but Naishkarmya, real Naishkarmya means the activities by which that's what a literal also न शोभते ज्ञानमलं निरंजनम कुतः पुनः शश्वत भद्रम ईश्वरे न चार्पितम यदपि कर्म कारणम. He says. So even though the knowledge of self-realization, pure spiritual knowledge, Prabhupada is quoting Gopal Tapani Upanishad here, that which is due to practice devotional service free from desires of material profit. Means when one is acting in devotional service with no desire, that is basically one wants to become free from karmic bondage. And if one does not have such inclinations, then one cannot have, then one should absorb one's mind fully in the Supreme Lord. And then finally Prabhupada is speaking about conclusion of yoga ladder. What is that? It starts from karma yoga without fruitive results, nishkama karma yoga. Nishkama karma yoga plus knowledge and renunciation is jnana yoga. So, and then jnana yoga plus meditation is equal to ashtanga yoga. Ashtanga yoga plus realization of Krishna in devotion is bhakti yoga. So bhakti yoga has aspects of all other yogas plus something additional. You see the yoga ladder. So first yoga ladder is karma yoga, especially nishkama karma yoga, in which there is there is freedom from fruity activities, but yeah, there is some fruity activities involved, and there is connection with the Lord. So that is lowest rung in the ladder of yoga ladder. But when it is added with knowledge and renunciation, that is called as jnana yoga. And then to jnana yoga, when the meditation part is added, it is called as ashtanga yoga. So ashtanga yoga means what? Nishkama karma yoga plus knowledge and renunciation plus meditation. That is ashtanga yoga. And when the realization of Krishna in devotion is added, that becomes bhakti yoga. So bhakti yoga has all these aspects like that. So in this way, the yoga ladder is mentioned. So this karma, jnana and ashtanga yoga, they are different steps on yoga ladder, but the goal of yoga is bhakti yoga. And ultimately this particular, processes of karma, jnana and ashtanga, they are progressive paths towards the destination of bhakti yoga only. And that's why yoga actually means bhakti yoga. As some of you said that in other paths there are selfish interests, whereas bhakti yoga is selfless service to the Lord. And other yogis, they have some material desires, right? Bhukti, mukti, siddhi, some material desires are there, whereas bhakti yoga is free from all material desires. And other paths, one may fail to achieve success, whereas in bhakti yoga, the success is guaranteed. And Prabhupada says that they may stick to one point and fail to progress further, and thus they are called as a particular name. Like somebody gets stuck up at karma yoga only, so he's called as karma yogi. He doesn't make further. Somebody adds knowledge, jnana, doesn't start meditating, so he gets stuck up over there, so he's called as jnana yogi. In this way they are called as by different names. Whereas a bhakti yogi, ends and means are the same. Yeah, that's what some devotees replied also. Ends and means are the same in bhakti. Correct. Then when, yeah, and there is no ulterior motive. Some of you replied that also. There is no ulterior knowledge and renunciation. It is called as Jnana Yoga, and when Jnana is meditation, it is called Ashtanga Yoga. When Ashtanga Yoga comes to the point of realizing Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is called as Bhakti Yoga. Himalayas, Mount Everest, you can say. All right, so this ends this particular chapter. Okay. Of yoga in bhakti, very true. Many times we call devotees of Shiva. What do you mean by devotees of Shiva? It is only a, you can say it's only nomenclature, but actually one cannot be devotee of Shiva, one, but particularly popular slang. So they say devotee of Ganapati, devotee of Shiva, devotee of Devi, all that. But actually devotee means devotee of Vishnu, but it has become slang now. So Nanpur is asking, what do you mean by Naishkarma? Naishkarma means basically working without fruits, working in such a way that one will not be entangled in the reactions of this. That is called as basically Naishkarma. So basically here Gopal Tapani Upanishad says that rendering service free from desires for material profit in this life or next life, that is called as Naishkarma. So one doesn't need any material profits in exchange towards activities. That's a Naishkarma. So anyway, so we do have some time, so we'll discuss about the glory of this particular chapter. So this is the pastime happened in Pratishtanpur again, which is Paithan. All of you know Paithan. Paithan is a place near Aurangabad, very, very holy place, very important place. Also Paithan, especially traditional people, they know Paithan a lot. So this, and in NOD we have this place of Paithan called as Pratishtanpur also. So there was a particular king in this Pratishtanpur. So of course the whole thing is beginning with that Lord Vishnu is telling the glories of 6th chapter. So we have to know that this description of these different glories of these chapters is given by Vishnu to Lakshmi Devi. Lord Vishnu is telling the glories of each chapter of Bhagavad Gita to Lakshmi Devi. And Lord Vishnu tells that whoever hears this description will be liberated from the material world, he is telling. So this Paithan, Pratishtanpur, is a place which is on the bank of Godavari river. And there is a deity of Lord named as Pippalalesh. Pippal. Actually, there it is said also somewhere, one sannyasi Maharaj was telling that actually this people tree is not different than Lord Vishnu. So that's why Lord's name is also Pippalesh. So Lord is staying there in the name of Pippalesh. So in that town, there was a king. His name was Janashruti. And he was very qualified. A lot of wonderful qualities were there. Used to do sacrifices, and so much opulent and large sacrifices he would do that the smoke reached heavenly planets. That Nanda Lord also, the smoke ascended to the heavenly planets, and the trees in the heavenly planets.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hari Bol.
Just small clarification required here that this Pippaleshwar generally we call Lord Shiva, and because Lord Shiva is Bhutanath, that's why we see that many evil spirits, even the bats, they reside in this people tree.
Yeah, actually, many names of Lord Shiva and Vishnu are quite interchangeable. If you see Bhagavatam, many names are there. So even Lord Shiva is called also Pippaleshwar, I agree. But Lord Vishnu is also called as Pippaleshwar. Hmm. Pippaleshwar is Vishnu's name also. Actually, word Shiva is also name of Vishnu only. If you read Vishnu Sharvasthanu, that word comes. Sharma, Shara Shiva Sthanu. Shiva name is the name of Lord Vishnu only, actually speaking. So actually, on in material world, Lord Shiva acts mostly. All the activities of material world are done on behalf of Lord Vishnu by Lord Shiva. That's why there is a similarity in their names. But anyway, so this king Janashruti, he used to perform such sacrifices that the smoke of those sacrifices reached the heavenly planets, and the trees in heavenly planets, the leaves of those trees became black, as if they're offering their respects to Janashruti. And that's how, because of these activities of great king Janashruti, the demigods used to always reside in this Pratishtanpur. Actually, quite up to recent, this Paithan, Pratishtanpur, was a very famous place of holy, one of the very holy places. I don't know, even in amongst old people now also, you will see that Paithan is considered one of the very holy places. So all the demigods used to reside in this Pratishtanpur. So in fact, and he was so charitable also. So just like the clouds, they distribute rain unlimitedly, practically, indiscriminately. Similarly, this Janashruti, he would give charity also. And because of his very pious nature, the rains would always come on time. The fields were full of crops. There were no different rodents. And he would dig wells and lakes for citizens' welfare. And this way, he was very pious and always entered into some welfare work, pious work. That's why the demigods also were very pleased. So, once upon a time, these demigods, some of the demigods, they're flying one behind another and they're talking together. And one of their demigod, who was in the form of swan, named Bhadrashva, along with other swans, he flew ahead, little ahead of the rest, other people. Once he told Bhadrashva, they said, "Oh, Bhadrashva, my dear brother, why are you flying ahead? Why don't you see that in front of you, this great king Janashruti is there? And he's so powerful that he can burn up the enemies by his simple desire." And then Bhadrashva heard that how other swans were questioning him. So then he had a good laugh and he said, "Oh, is this king as powerful as the sage Raivaka?" Raikava. And then that's it. And then they just went away. But king understood. King knew the language of birds, to know the language of birds. So this king understood that yes, the swans are speaking about some sage named Raikava. And he immediately came down from his roof to the palace and sat on his throne. And then he called his chariot driver, whose name was Maha, and he told him that you go and find out this Raikava sage. I want to meet him. And happily, this Maha, the chariot driver of Janashruti, he immediately went to search out for sage Raikava. So then first he traveled Chi. Of course, there was no Gorakhpur Express or something to go or Gyana Ganga Express, but he went by chariot. So he went to Kashi, our Varanasi, where Lord Vishwanath is there. And then from there he went to Gaya, where Lord Gadadhar is there, who is capable of freeing all living entities from bondage of birth and death. Lord Vishnu. In Gaya, Lord Vishnu is there. In Gaya, Lord Vishnu is there, who gives liberation. And in Kashi, Lord Shiva is there. And then after that, he went to Mathura, Hari Bol, our most favorite, right? And what is this Mathura? This Mathura can destroy all the sins of people. And there who resides? There Lord Krishna resides. So all the great sages, demigods, Vedas, Shastras, in their personal forms, they are very, very eager to reside in Mathura. In fact, they perform austerities in order to be able to reside in Mathura and render service to Lord Krishna. And what is the shape of this Mathura city? It is in the shape of half moon, crescent moon. And it is situated on the beautiful river, which is the mother of devotion. That river is, that is Yamuna. So in that area, there is we know there is Govardhan Hill, right? Govardhan, our favorite. So that Govardhan is also considered to be like a jewel in the mukut of Lord Krishna. So, and this Govardhan is surrounded by a lot of trees, creepers, etc. And there are 12 beautiful forests in Mathura, Vrindavan forests, where Krishna enjoys different pastimes. So this way, this Maha, who was the chariot driver of Janashruti, he was wandering. He wandered through Mathura, and finally he went ahead towards western direction and then to the northern direction. So from Delhi, and further he went to Kashmir. And there he saw, in the Kashmir, he saw there was a very large and shining white place. Maybe there was a lot of snowfall, which happens there. And at that place, he saw that all the people, even the foolish people, looked very beautiful, because there are a lot of sacrificial fires which were burning continuously over there. They're looking very beautiful. People were very beautiful. Now also we see Kashmiri people, they look so beautiful, right? Many of the Kashmiri people look so beautiful. The population looks so, because it was a very, very holy place. Now it is terrorist place. Unfortunately, it's a situation that it has become a terrorist place, but it was considered to be the Nandanvan of India. And the people were very, very pious over there, and there used to be a lot of sacrifices being performed. Many sages used to reside, and that's why it was a very holy land. And even foolish people looked very beautiful. So there was a Lord Shiva's deity which was being worshipped, named as Manikeshwara. In that town, it was being worshipped. And the king of Kashmir, he was a very great worshipper. We just now discussed that we should not call them devotees. So worshipper. He was a worshipper of Lord Shiva, Manikeshwara. And that's why the king's name was also Manikeshwar. So just near the temple of this Manikeshwar, there was a small cart on which, underneath a tree, this chariot driver Maha, he saw the great sage Raikava, and he recognized, because Janashruti, his king, he had given him a lot of descriptions about this sage, and he immediately recognized. And he asked this sage, "Oh, great sage, where are you living? What is your name? And you are a very elevated person. Why are you sitting in this place?" So when Raikava, he heard the questions of this Maha, he thought for some time and just replied, "I'm fully satisfied. I don't need anything." He said, "I don't want anything." And then Maha, he heard his reply, and in his heart he could understand everything. What was the purport? So he immediately left and again came back from Kashmir, Pratishtanpur, Paitan. And when he reached Paitan, immediately went and offered his respects to the king. And he informed the king of all the things which took place, how his journey was, how he has met with this sage Raikava in Kashmir. And in this way, he informed everything. And the king, after hearing, he decided that immediately I want to go and meet that king, and he immediately left to meet the king Raikava, to meet the sage Raikava. So King Janashruti, immediately left Python to meet this sage Raikava in Kashmir. So then he boarded his chariot and took many valuable gifts with him, and he traveled to Kashmir all the way. And when he arrived at that place where this Raikava sage was staying, he fell at his feet and he presented him various things, silks and jewels and everything, the gifts he had brought for the sage. And when the sage he saw all these things, he became very angry on the king, and he said, "Oh, foolish king, you take all these useless things and put in your chariot and leave from this place." And then the king, although he was chastised severely by this sage, but still he fell at the feet of this sage with great devotion and begged his forgiveness and requested him to be merciful upon him. Then he asked from the sage, "O sage, how can you have attained this high stage of renunciation and devotion to the Lord? What is your secret?" It's like we sometimes ask devotees, "What is your secret?" He asked. And then, because despite chastising, this king was very submissive and very humble, so sage Raikava replied that I daily recite the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and that's why I have become so advanced in my life. So after that, actually this sage Raikava, he spoke entire 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita to King Janashruti, and in this way the king, he engaged himself daily reciting the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. In due course of time, an aeroplane from Vaikuntha came, and that is a flower aeroplane which came, not Pushpak Viman, another flower aeroplane. It came from Vaikuntha, and just because this king was daily reciting 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, so he went back to Godhead. So in this way, it is said that Lord Vishnu told that anybody who recites the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita will very soon attain to the service of Lord Vishnu at his abode in Vaikuntha, and there is no doubt about it. So this is the Falashruti of this 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. So thus we have completed this 6th chapter, and next week we'll begin with 7th chapter, which is very nice, interesting chapter, because up to 6th chapter there was a lot of more about general philosophy was being discussed, but now 7th chapter there is Krishna is revealing his own knowledge about himself, because till now we understood about Paramatma and all that, but now Krishna is going to reveal that how he is not, Paramatma is him only, and what are his opulences, what is Supreme Lords. So that's why 7th chapter onwards, 7th, 8th chapters are very special, because Krishna is revealing his own glories, his own wonderful attributes to Arjun. The knowledge of the absolute. Okay, so I think we can stop here today. Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai.